Hello and welcome to Business Incorporated. I'm Chimeze Obi Iwagu. Coming up on the show today, South Africa's PMI rises to 50.8 in January from 50.2 in December 2020. And Ghana's Monetary Policy Committee retains interest rate at 14.5% for the fifth time. Kenya's Capital Market Authority seeks exemption from digital tax for market players. We get the show started now with intraday market numbers, and starting off here on the African continent. South Africa's JSE index sustained Tuesday's positive sentiments and was up 0.47% at intraday. On the flip side, Nigeria's main index declined 0.16%, while the EGX 30 in Egypt was marginally lower by 0.09%. Kenya closed positive on Tuesday. And in the Middle East, markets reversed Tuesday's gains and were all in the red at intraday. In the UAE, Dubai's main index declined 0.43%, while Abu Dhabi's index was lower by 0.41%. Elsewhere in the region, the Qatari index posted the highest loss of 0.44%, while Saudi Arabia's market lost 0.28% at intraday. In Europe, stocks advanced in early trade as positive market sentiment continues amid a busy week of earnings. And talking about those earnings, let's talk to Conrad, standing by there on Frankfurt Stock Exchange. Hello, Conrad. Good afternoon. Good to see you again. It's midweek already.
Thanks for having me back.
All right, so big ticket earnings reports are driving trading on the equities market. Google's parent company Alphabet, Sony, truck maker Volvo are among the companies which managed to beat market expectations. Who is in the limelight in Frankfurt?
Well, Jimmy, the big ticket company to report earnings here in Frankfurt, here in Germany, is Siemens today. The report has pushed the share price of the company to a new record high because the fourth quarter net profit, also the order situation at Siemens in the fourth quarter was higher than in the same quarter the year before. And let me underline this. The comparison is with a quarter, the fourth quarter of 2019, which was before the corona pandemic hit. So no wonder that Siemens' share price has risen to a new record high. The outlook was also raised by Siemens' CEO, Joe Kaeser. In particular, he's optimistic about the United States. He says the US is the biggest opportunity in the second half of this year and into 2022, of course, next year. And if in terms of Germany and the rest of Europe, he's not so super optimistic. He says that business here would be more of a catch-up game than a long-term growth opportunity.
Now, talking about Siemens there, the CEO is having his last day. Joe Kaeser is his name. You did mention it now and sounds very American, but he's originally Joseph, who grew up in Germany's Lederhosen state, Bavaria. What's his legacy? For what will he be remembered?
You know that laptop and lederhosen is actually Bavaria's claim. They say that they stand for old school Bavarian beer drinking tradition, but at the same time for modern technologies. And Joe Kaeser really represents this very much. He speaks perfect English, but he rolls the R just like people in Bavaria do, so you can hear where he comes from. He will probably be remembered for a lot of topics, for talking about a lot of topics that other CEOs don't really like to talk about. He was very outspoken against xenophobia, against, new right-wing tendencies in Germany's society. He also came out with a couple of, PR stunts, I would call it, by, for example, offering a post in the supervisory board of Siemens to Fridays for Future activists. But also he was a very tough numbers guy who cut tens of thousands of jobs over the year. And with the spin-off of Siemens Healthineers and Siemens Energy, he did exactly what the markets wanted him to do. What he was not so much was, the visionary leader into a technological future. The number of patents that Siemens, applies for each year has declined over the last few years.
And in all the corporate news there, Vodafone plans an IPO of its phone mass division called Vantage. The IPO is supposed to happen in Frankfurt, not in London, where Vodafone is based. Why is that? And when is the IPO going to take place?
Well, so far, Vodafone says that the IPO will happen at the beginning of this year. Insiders from London are now talking about the month of March. The IPO of Vantage Towers could be valuating the company at up to 20 billion euros, and Vodafone is expected to cash in around about 3 billion with this IPO. Why Frankfurt? Why not London, the seat of this new company? The seat, the official legal seat of the company already is in Germany. Germany is the most important market for Vantage Towers. And also, even though Vodafone's CEO Nick Reed denies this, Brexit probably played a role here. The business with telephone masts, with, towers where you have this technology installed on. That's a very political business. Often people are against those masts, so you have to get involved very well with local politics. And it probably is easier for a company listed here in Germany to negotiate politics on the European continent instead of, being listed in London and being a British company.
I get that. All right, Conrad, enjoy the rest of the day, and we'll talk tomorrow. In the UK, the economy is, of course, on course for a sharp contraction in the first quarter of this year due to the third COVID-19 lockdown, but the rapid rollout of vaccines has lifted confidence among service sector firms to the highest since May 2014. Let's see how this data is moving the markets at this time. Let's talk to Juliana. Hello, Juliana. Good afternoon. Well, the services PMI shows a sharp fall in business activity in January, but vaccine rollout has helped it to lift optimism. What are the key factors here?
Well, yeah, there is a renewed sense of optimism. This has come really from the hospitality and the travel and leisure sector. We did hear from the Ryanair boss and EasyJet, even though they were posting pretty abysmal end-of-year results, they have seen that there is still some, pent-up demand. Lots of Brits are still keen to try and get a holiday in the summer. And if restrictions will be lifted, according to how the vaccine process continues to be rolled out, then, of course, we can see activity being listed. We have had a look into the private sector today as the turn of the services industry. Not great, as you said. This is the steepest fall that we've seen in 8 months. In January, the service sector PMI data came in at 49.36.5. This is a massive fall from 49.4 in December. But as you said, we are in a third national lockdown, and it's really hitting the service industry. Services is the mainstay of British GDP, and with restaurants, hotels, travel and leisure closed, this was to be expected.
And then Asda Brothers are in the process of buying the supermarket chain Asda from Walmart and plan to sell Asda's petrol stations to EG Group for some £750 million. What are you hearing about this deal?
Well, yes, this deal has been ongoing since October. It's a £6.8 billion deal. Pretty exciting deal for Britain, because this is the first time in over 20 years that Asda will be in the hands of a British business, and the British government are really happy about it. It still has to get the go-ahead from the Competition and Markets Authority, but today the Asda Brothers and those stakeholders who are involved in the M&A have given us a little taster of what we can expect. As you said, Asda's forecourts are going to be sold to the EG Group and TDR Capital for I believe, between 750 and 795 million pounds. What's quite interesting about that announcement is that this group is actually owned by the Issa brothers. This is how they made their fortune. So it'd be interesting to see what the CMA have to say about that. They've also mentioned that Walmart, the owner of Asda, they will retain a majority stake in the company. That's also really important. But they said if things go to head and it does get the funds up from the CMA, then perhaps the deal will be done by the end of the month. There is a tiny statement here. They said Asda's an iconic brand and that we've known and loved since we were children. We're proud to bring its ownership back to the UK and delighted that with the support of TDR Capital and Walmart, we can invest in its future. That's a statement from Moshin and Zuba Issa.
All right, let's look at the numbers now. What's moving the markets this time?
Well, as you said, it's all about the vaccine rollout. Sentiment is pretty good. There's optimism, even though we had some pretty concerning news about a new variant that could potentially stop or reduce the efficacy of the vaccines that we've been rolling out thus far. But again, we've had some positive statements in terms of how consumer confidence could be starting to rise again if the vaccine rollout does continue in the way it's going. So at intraday, the FTSE All Share is up by 0.41%. The FTSE 100 is up by 0.36%. And the FTSE 250 is up by 0.27%. In the currencies market here, the pound is down on the US dollar by 0.23%, up on the euro just slightly by 0.01%, and down on the Japanese yen by 0.15%.
All right, Juliana, go get some rest. I'll talk to you tomorrow. And stocks in Asia Pacific were mixed today as a private survey showed China's services sector activity growth slowly sharply in January. Mainland Chinese stocks declined on the day, with the Shanghai Composite down 0.46%, while the Shenzhen Component slipped 0.668%. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index was about 0.3% lower as of its final hour of trading. Elsewhere, major markets in Asia Pacific saw gains. Japan's Nikkei 225 closed 1% higher at 28,646 points, while the Topix Index ended its trading day 1.3% higher at 1,871 points. South Korea's Kospi closed 1.06% higher at 3,129 points. In the U.S., stock futures rose slightly in the morning after a strong market rally as the Reddit trading mania continued to unwind. Dow futures rose 27 points. S&P 500 futures and Nasdaq 100 futures also both traded in mildly positive territory. Strong earnings from Amazon and Alphabet helped futures. Amazon reported earnings nearly double Wall Street estimates. However, the stock move was tempered by news that Jeff Bezos would step down as CEO. On the global oil market, prices rose in early trade today after hitting their highest in about a year in the previous session, boosted by an unexpected draw in U.S. crude and gasoline stocks, fueling demand recovery hopes as OPEC Plus forecasts the market will be in deficit in 2021. Brent crude futures rose 0.82% to $57.93 a barrel, while U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude futures climbed 0.71% to $55.15 a barrel. Market sentiment was also bolstered by news that Democrats in the U.S. Congress took the first steps towards advancing President Joe Biden's proposed $1.9 trillion coronavirus aid plan without Republican support. And in the metals market, silver prices attempted a rebound earlier today after an over 8% plunge in the previous session prompted some buying, although the social media-driven rally that started last week appears to have cooled off. Spot silver rose 1.4% to $26.98 an ounce. Elsewhere, spot gold rose 0.1% to $1,839 per ounce, while U.S. gold futures added 0.4% to $1,840. Platinum gained 0.3% at $1,097, and palladium shed 0.1% to $2,240. All right, we'll take a break, and then when we come back, we'll look at all the developing stories on the African continent. To stay with us. Well, on Monday this week, South Africa received the first batch of COVID-19 vaccines that are expected to help the country's efforts to stem the virus. The 1 million AstraZeneca vaccine doses produced by the Serum Institute of India are expected to be used to inoculate frontline health care workers. Let's get more details on that from our Channels TV South Africa Bureau Chief, Betty Dibia. Thank you very much for joining us, Betty. Good to see you. I mean, I've not spoken to you this year. Happy New Year to you.
So happy New Year, Chimizi. Thank you so much.
Right. So South Africa has received the first batch of this COVID-19 vaccine. So bring us up to speed with how it's being distributed and those that are receiving and those that are not receiving this jab yet.
Well, no one has received so far in the country. It's still going to take a few more days, about 10 or 11 days more, because the quality control is still going on at BioVac. BioVac is a biopharmaceutical company in whose custody the vaccines have gone before they're going to be distributed to the 9 provinces of the country. So the relevant authorities will be going through whether it's of good quality and all that, safe enough for the people before they now send it out to the different provinces for distribution. But already this morning, the Health Minister, Dr. Zweli Mkhize, launched what they call the vaccine data system, which is an online platform where people can enroll the relevant people for the first phase. Remember, it's in 3 phases. The first phase is the frontline workers, clinical and non-clinical. So it's still going to take a bit of time, a few more days, a week plus, before that gets into the arms of anyone, literally. That's where we are now, and that process is on.
Now, President Ramaphosa says the country has secured an additional 20 million doses from Pfizer, 9 million from Johnson & Johnson, which will begin to arrive in the second quarter, and 12 million from COVAX, with about 2 million arriving next month. How is this news being received by South Africans, especially after he has received heavy criticism for being too slow in procuring the vaccines?
You know, the acquisition of vaccines is not it's not child's play, and a lot of decisions, have had to be taken. The government, under the AU initiative, the VAT initiative, as well as the COVAX, that's the WHO arrangement with Gavi or so. So the people are happy. They're hopeful, although you still have what they call the anti-vax people, who are still against vaccines. But we know we live with vaccines every other day. You have children being vaccinated, even adults. We take the yellow fever vaccination for certain countries that we want to visit. So I need to point out 9 million doses coming from Johnson & Johnson will be produced locally, which is a plus for the country as well. It will be produced by a local organization called Aspen, which has received the authorization, the emergency use authorization from Johnson & Johnson. The company is based in the Eastern Cape. That's a Nelson Mandela Bay in the Eastern Cape. That is expected, according to the head of the organization, that will be expected in the second quarter. So it will be produced locally, and people are happy about that. But generally, because people have been able to see what's happened in other countries where the vaccine rollout has happened in the US, the UK, and other countries, they're a bit more confident despite all the conspiracy theories and the disinformation going around. We spoke to a number of people who said, look, we're open. Some said we will wait till the first batch of people have done theirs, then we'll see what happens. But generally, people are open to taking the vaccine when it gets to them.
Sure. If I may ask you, Betty, you live in South Africa, so would you be taking this vaccine if you have the opportunity?
I would. If I can take other vaccines, I would. But I will still watch. It's still a long way. I belong to the 3rd phase, which will happen probably in about 9 months' time. So by then, would have had time to see others, to see how it plays out.
I know. I know, yeah. Okay. In another development, the president also eased the ban on alcohol, stating that the country has passed the peak of the second wave of the pandemic. What does this latest ease mean for the country?
Well, it will be good for the economy, although a lot of damage has been done in the past year. Not the fault of the government, but blame it all on COVID. This is an alcohol producing country, an alcohol consuming country on a very high level, high scale. So the three bans we've had within 1 year has affected a lot of industries, not just the producers, but the consumers as well, and the channels through which alcohol is being sold. But now, hopefully, some jobs would have been saved. We know that it cost the economy quite a lot. We had SAB, that's South African Breweries, Heineken, and Distel, cancelling high investment, expansion investment worth billions of rand. And according to SAB, the ban, in the three bans that we got, cost the fiscus about 4.5 billion rand. But hopefully, the beginning of recovery will start. It will take a long time. I know that export wasn't really affected, but jobs within the country, over 400,000 jobs in that industry and those affiliated to it were affected, and maybe some jobs would have been saved with the unbanning of the alcohol. But then again, you still have those who are worried, like the South African Alcohol Policy Alliance, which is saying, look, this unbanning is too much too soon because of the consumption level in the country. But then when the president was speaking, he said, look, the responsibility is still on the people to adhere, to be responsible, even if there's consumption of alcohol, so that we won't have high levels of trauma, displacing attention from the attention being given to COVID. So it's still, everybody has his or her own responsibility in balancing this so that the economy can be salvaged up to, or the beginning of that will start.
Sure. All right. Thank you, Betty. Do stay
Thank you
safe
so much.
and be well.
Bye.
Well, still in South Africa, the private sector activity expanded again in January as firms completing outstanding orders helped output increase by its most in 4 years. And its IHS Markets Purchasing Managers Index rose to 50.8 in January from 50.2 in December, above the 50 level that denotes expansion for the fourth month in a row. The modest increase was mainly driven by the completion of outstanding business. However, firms continue to struggle to find new work due to the COVID-19 pandemic, with new orders continuing to contract. And the Monetary Policy Committee of the Bank of Ghana has maintained the policy rate at 14.5% for the fifth time in its quest to review developments in the economy and take the necessary steps to ensure financial and economic stability. The governor of the central bank, Ernest Addison, attributes the decision to the balance of risks to inflation and steady growth of the economy. He explains that risks to inflation in the near term are broadly contained, but short to medium term risks emanating from the fiscal expansion and rising crude oil prices are emerging. The central bank is targeting headline inflation of 8.2% in the second quarter of 2021. And Kenya's Capital Market Authority plans to engage the government on the newly introduced digital tax to safeguard gains made within the sector. The Director of Regulatory at CMA says the authority intends to examine the extent to which these exemptions apply to the capital markets industry participants, licenses and products. The CMA and Kenya Revenue Authority will conduct an assessment, the outcome of which will inform targeted policy analysis and advocacy efforts aimed at promoting the growth of the Kenyan capital markets industry. And that's it on the program. Thank you for watching. I'm Chimeze Obi Iwabu.